I know there's some bonkers stuff going on in the middle there. The mount actually did go completely nuts though. Yep, that's called the squiggle. I'm sat in the warmth in the kitchen and I've got two VNC sessions running. So I've got this one here, which is on the Christmas Tree Nebula or the Cone Nebula, and the guiding is going very well indeed, as you can see there. Very happy with that. That's really good. Now on the other side, here's another VNC session. Here is the Raspberry Pi, which is running Astroberry. This is on my old EQ5 Pro, but the guiding figures are pretty awful, as they used to be. But I've managed to get this to work, and it's taking exposures, and hopefully in a second or two, so it should count down there to 1, 0, and then it pops up hopefully with an image. There we go, so there's the image. Now I know there's a huge gradient going from, because there's a street lamp, which is why it's darker over here and lighter over here. This is really cool because I'm sat in the warmth. Now VNC is allowing me to connect to both the mini PC and a Raspberry Pi. I wired the Raspberry Pi with an Ethernet cable to my router going through the house, out through the door, and then to the mount, because the Wi-Fi was really very poor from the Raspberry Pi. So that's the best way that I've found to do it. But there we go, so you can see it's working. I've managed to get it working. Here we are on both of the rigs. So there's the AZ EQ6, which is my main imaging rig, which is currently on the Christmas Tree Nebula or the Cone Nebula, and as always, my usual light pollution filter, the wooden board. And there's the second rig, which is also on the Cone Nebula at the moment, but this is just set up so that I can test the Raspberry Pi, and it was absolutely third time lucky to get it working. I managed to polar align, which took ages, so I need to work on the polar aligning routine. I managed to slew to Sirius and plate solve, and then I could do a focus by looping the output of the camera on the screen and using a very large Batanoff mask, which I've got down there that you can see. And then I managed to slew to Pleiades, and guiding started and was, as I expected, not particularly brilliant. But then K-Stars crashed, which I was not impressed with. So K-Stars, the program which is controlling everything which is here, it just crashed, and I had to park the scope. And then I had another issue after I'd set it all up again, where the guide camera just disconnected, so I had to park everything, restart everything and go again. And then I've had one more crash, so far it's not been particularly reliable, but I am prepared to give this a go. Let's go around the rig. So I've got the dew heaters there, there's the guide scope, and there's my fan cooled Altair camera and the 130 PDS, and it's on an EQ5 Pro mount. And there's the USB hub which has everything connected to it. And on the main imaging scope, as always, it's got the 269C cooled camera, the 290C camera there doing the guiding, and the Altair 102 ED Ascent doing the main imaging. And that's all riding on the AZ EQ6. So we'll just have a look at the two VNC sessions. So there's the Raspberry Pi, and it's working quite well at the moment. And then here's the EQ6. I mean, you can see the difference in the figures. 0.22 next to 1.94. It's improved. Okay, still stark difference though. That you can see, which is what you'd expect. You know, it's a different level of mount really. Here we are in PixInsight. I've loaded all of the frames that I took from the Raspberry Pi into PixInsight, and I'm just going to blink through them. Let's see what we've got. Actually, looking at some of these, the stars are not too bad. They look quite round, which is great. So let's blink through. There are two different images here. There's Pleiades and also the Christmas tree, the Cone Nebula. So just going through. There you go, there's the Pleiades. Actually, I'm not too unhappy about those. I know there's some bonkers stuff going on in the middle there, but if you look at some of these files, they don't look too bad. Okay, so the mount went a bit bonkers there. I think that's where the Raspberry Pi crashed. But looking at some of their stars, they're actually pretty good. Okay, aeroplane. And the one thing with a reflector telescope, like a Newtonian, is you get these lovely diffraction spikes on the stars. Now, some people don't like that. I really quite like it. I think it's a nice feature. But looking at that, that's not too bad. Let's go through to Pleiades. Actually, I really like that. That's not a bad image. And the stars look reasonably good. Even though the guiding wasn't brilliant, the stars are relatively round, which is good. Now, I didn't get many of the Pleiades before it crashed, and also it looks like it got a lot of cloud coming in there maybe as well. And there's this huge blob of dirt, which is probably on the filter I was using. So I think that's success, actually. I think the Raspberry Pi is doing pretty well there. So let's have a look at the files from the EQ6 mount, which was on the Christmas tree. Okay, I've just loaded all the files from the Christmas tree nebula. Now this was taken with the refractor this time. This is the 102 ED with the cooled camera. So let's blink through these. Now, I know I did have a failure of the mount. It went a bit weird halfway through, and there's a meridian flip. But you can see the stars are quite sharp. There's a few bits where it did go a little bit bonkers. There, for example. Let's go back and have a look at that. I know that I lost my guiding at this point, and you can visibly see that something went wrong there. And yeah, there again, the guiding did sort of drift slightly on a couple of these exposures. Let's go further up. At one point, the mount actually did go completely nuts though. It looks like it was there. Yep, it went a bit wrong there. Interesting. I think I've got some good data there though to work with. So I'll process all of this data from the 102 ED, and then I'll show you the final image at the end.